Hello, Jen here with a layout for Tuesday's inspiration. There is our inspiration that you just saw for this week. It was chosen by Hollie and it is a layout from Melly's art. And so yeah, that is what we're going to use. So the we that I'm talking about is myself and Hollie and Mel and Lynda. And every week we are going to rotate through the four of us, sharing some sort of inspiration piece that we can all use to create our layouts. So last week it was a picture that Mel had taken. This week is the layout that Hollie shared that we will be scraplifting or just, kind of being inspired by. And yeah, every week will be a little bit different because it's really just going to depend on what we've been seeing within that week that maybe has caught our eye and, piqued our interest a little bit. Maybe it's a color or something we ate or something we've seen on Pinterest or whatever it might be. It's just going to be, something to help kickstart a little bit of creativity and give us some inspiration. So I hope you guys enjoy and feel free to play along if you'd like. Please, by all means, this goes for anything and everything when it comes to me anyways. But if you create a layout inspired by one of our layouts or inspired by the inspiration piece that we share for the week, and you want to go ahead and tag me in your Instagram post, I would love to share and shout you out and show off your work. So by all means, please feel free to do that. I love to do that and spread a little bit of love and share your creativity with everybody. So yeah, let me tell you what I'm working on. I obviously right away could see from Mel's layout that it is a grid, and that's not something that I do all that often. So that's definitely the first thing that jumped out to me that I thought I want to make a grid. And so I pulled out my Sunny Days collection. This is a new Simple Stories collection that I got from Sandy at Scrapshots. It's in the store now. So if you like this collection, you definitely want to head over to the store and add this to your cart and get it ordered because it's super, super gorgeous and very classic Simple Stories summer. So lots of florals, lots of fun kind of summer images like the sun shining, bathing suits, ice cream cones, that kind of stuff. It's really a nice, well-rounded summer collection, and it's going to work for a lot of different layouts. So definitely head over to the store and grab it. Yes, and so that's what I pulled out because it's brand new for me, and this is actually my first time cutting into everything and getting it used up. So I knew with this grid pattern that I wanted to kind of scoop some of those patterns that you see in a couple of the journaling pieces from the cut apart sheets. I don't often use those. I tend to find myself maybe gravitating to one or two of them and then either using the backgrounds of them to get a little bit more color into maybe some layers, or I go for the B-side pattern. I don't know why, but I often have to sacrifice them because I like that B-side pattern or whatever it might be. But I thought with this grid pattern, I definitely didn't have 12 photos that I wanted to scrap. And I knew even here, I probably didn't have 6 photos that I wanted to scrap. So this was a really good opportunity to use up some of those journaling spots. And if you are going through a new collection and you have some pieces that are just really jumping out to you that you really, really like, rather than holding on to them and hoarding them, I definitely challenge you to create a layout that allows you to showcase them. So these pieces weren't necessarily my absolute favorites. These were just the ones that were more of a square shape, but the idea was that I was actually using them as journaling squares and using those elements rather than either hoarding them and just holding on to them, waiting for the perfect moment to use them, or flipping them over and using the other side. So in this type of a grid pattern, there is ample opportunity for you to use a bunch of these squares to actually display your favorite elements of your collection. Even if it's the die cuts or it's, the foam stickers, whatever it might be, this is a good opportunity for you to use those elements, pull them out and use those as one of the squares if you don't want to have photos in every single one of your grid squares. So definitely something to consider with those brand new collections that you're getting. I don't often do grid layouts, if I'm being honest, because straight lines scare me. And grids look really, really nice when they're very clean and straight and everything's measured exactly and everything's lined up. And I just don't really do that very often. I'm more of a rip and tear and eyeball and, cut with my heart kind of person. And so when I do grids, I really have to take the time to be very intentional about making my grid layouts look like I want them to be a little cattywampus. I want them to be a little kind of quirky and different. And so I feel like sometimes they take a little bit more time for me to do because I tend to get fussy, which sounds really strange. You would think that you would get more fussy by having to measure and making sure everything's lined up perfectly. But for me, what I mean by getting fussy is I really just, I'm constantly moving the elements around on the page until everything feels balanced. And it's about feel. When you're measuring, when everything is cut to exactly the same sizes and the right sizes, and you're using a ruler to measure the spaces in between your squares or rectangles or whatever shape your grid is in, you kind of just have all of those measurements done and everything falls into place. But when you're doing it this way, you sort of have to move things around and go by how it feels and how it looks balanced. And so that's where I tend to get a little bit fussy just within myself, is moving things around to get that feel, to get that moment of, yes, this looks right, this feels right. And you've seen me do this through my whole video here, where I've moved those squares around, I've cut pieces off, I have torn edges, I have moved those journaling spots to kind of balance out color. None of my squares is the same size. I did use my trimmer at the beginning to cut the pattern papers just to kind of give me large enough pieces. They all started out as 4x4 pieces, except the very first pattern that I cut. I sort of used that just to give me enough squares that were large enough that I could play with them, but I knew I would be cutting some chunks off and tearing some edges to bring in a little bit of texture and stuff like that. So in the end, none of these squares are the same size. They aren't kind of all lined up exactly the same way. The journaling spots have multiple layers to them. The photos don't have multiple layers to them. I'm adding some foam behind those journaling spots to give a little bit of dimension. They're all just, slightly twisted and kind of, a little wonky here and there. So they aren't perfect and they don't all match. And by doing that, what you achieve is something that looks very intentional and put together in exactly the way you wanted it to be. And that's more me. So I really like how this turned out, and I had a lot of fun putting all of these pieces together and picking out the embellishments, because again, those spaces where you aren't putting photos are great opportunities to use up some of your favorite ephemera and embellishment pieces from a collection, maybe some of those things that you've sort of been holding onto and hoarding a little bit, you could pull them out and really showcase them, and they would get their own square on your grid layout. And I definitely feel like a grid layout is a good opportunity to consider each space. I keep saying squares, but you don't have to use squares. You could do a grid layout that is rectangles or any other shape, circles, hexagons, whatever you want to do. But each of those spaces is like a dedicated little layout all on its own. And so it's a good opportunity to pull out some of those favorite elements that you maybe haven't been using and pop them into your grid layout and really kind of frame them and showcase them. So just something to consider. But it's fun for me to kind of add those little extra elements and create my little spaces within my larger layout. So that's what I did. So the grid is obviously fully inspired by Mel's layout, but also the background paper. I really like that her background paper, and I think it was actually the design of the paper had sort of that rainbow, top to it, or like a bit of a header where she's put her title. And so I wanted to recreate that, and I thought it would be fun to use the clouds to kind of bring in that element. Here you can see, so she's got rainbow stripes up at the top, and then she's got all her photos down at the bottom. And so I wanted to bring that feel into, because I feel like it definitely gives you a place where your title goes. It kind of, introduces the layout, and then you have the information all down at the bottom. I have a feeling that piece of paper could very likely be a Simple Stories paper as well. It has kind of a Simple Stories feeling to it, but I just liked that. And so I didn't have a piece of paper that was the pattern already printed on the paper, so I went ahead and created it myself. So I used the clouds, which I thought were super cute, and kind of make a natural topper at the top of the page. And I just kept the branding strip on at the top of the page, because for this particular paper, it didn't matter where I cut it. And so I just cut the clouds from the bottom of the page and used the branding strip as the spot to adhere my my top portion. So I know I have a 12 by 12 piece of paper, and I didn't have to lose the pattern, the yellow pattern at all, or the cloud pattern at all. So it just kind of pieced itself back together by using that branding strip as my spot to connect it. So that is the back. And then now I've just added my photos. I cut them down a little bit to fit the squares. I showed you there that all of the pieces that I had cut off and torn off of my squares, I kept them, because sometimes once you get everything put together, you might want to add a little layer or a little extra bit of texture here and there. Again, because you're trying to make every square a little bit unique. And so I kept those little pieces because they're great to kind of sneak in to add just a peek of another pattern, or add some fun extra layers if you need to. And then once all of my photos were down, I just went ahead and embellished. So using most of the foam squares and a couple pieces from the floral bits that I have from this collection, I didn't use any of the stickers. I was going to, and then I kind of forgot about them. They were at the bottom of the stack of papers. And then by the time I pulled them out and realized I had them, I thought, I'm actually kind of good. I like the elements. I think that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different details. There's a lot of fun patterns. And I didn't really need to add any extra embellishment or add any stickers anywhere. So I didn't use those. I will save them for the next layout. Actually, I think the next layout is going to be a mini album. So there will be lots of places to go ahead and put some stickers. One thing I do like to do, though, even in a grid pattern like this, I always try to have everything in threes. And so you'll see me count here in a second. So I have sort of 3 spots where there is the foam stickers, and I wanted then 3 spots where there would be some die cuts, and then I of course have like 3 photos and 3 journaling squares or journaling spots. So that's just kind of a me thing. So I added in some florals there to go ahead and give myself a couple extra die cuts. And then I'm going to finish it off with a splatter of some gold Tim Holtz Distress Mist, the spritz that you can get. It's a nice substitute for the Heidi Swap Gold. Not quite the same, but very, very close. And that is it. That is my layout for this week. Please check out all the ladies down below. They would love for you to go and see their layouts as well. If you have any questions, you can leave them for me down below too. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Happy scrapping. Bye.